Hi, everyone. Today we're going to tell the story of a woman whose daily life balanced on the edge between life and death, respect and contempt, light and darkness. You'll find out how she lived in a tiny, damp hut, survived on meager gifts and scraps, and faced dangers not only on the streets, but in every home where people expected the impossible from her. But before you get comfortable, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'm really curious to see who's joining us. Now, settle in and get cozy. We're getting started. You wake up long before the sun, though the difference between night and day in your small, sodden hovel is mostly theoretical. The only clue that the day has begun is the slightly less oppressive darkness pressing against your eyelids and the distant rumble of livestock stirring in the pens outside. You draw your thin woolen blanket tighter around your shoulders, though it does little to ward off the chill. The blanket, like everything else you own, is slightly damp, permanently damp, actually. The stone walls of your home sweat with cold every night, and your straw mattress drinks it in like a thirsty drunkard. There are three reasons for you to rise at this ungodly hour. The first is hunger. Your belly twists quietly, complaining about last night's meager dinner, a piece of hard bread that could be used as a weapon, and a thin, milky porridge. The second is the expectation that at any moment someone will pound on your door, shouting for your help, and you do not want to be caught sleeping. The third is the knowledge that lying in bed for too long is an invitation for all manner of aches and illnesses, from the stiff back you already have to the lung rot that took your aunt 3 winters ago. You grope for your clothes, a patched linen shift, a rough woolen overdress, and stockings that have seen better decades. They are no drier than your blanket, but at least they are not crawling with lice. Or perhaps the lice have simply given up and died. You do not bother with shoes yet. Your feet are tough, and the dirt floor is cold, but not as cold as what lies outside. Breakfast is a ceremonial affair. You take the bread from its hook, break off a piece, and inspect it for mold. The green and white fuzz is scraped away with a paring knife. Waste is a sin greater than most. You dip the bread into the pot of porridge, which has congealed into a consistency somewhere between glue and despair, and chew with slow determination. Every swallow is a victory, every bite a reminder that you are alive, for better or worse. The window is little more than a hole in the wall, covered by an oilcloth that only partially keeps out the wind and rain. You peel it back to see the outside world, muddy streets, gray sky, and the distant shape of the church tower. The sound of a dog barking mixes with the cawing of crows. Somewhere nearby, a baby wails. You wonder if you will be called to that house today, or if it is just hungry, as you are. You do not have a husband. Sometimes this is a blessing, sometimes a curse. A husband means more mouths to feed, more work to do, and a higher risk of dying in childbirth. You have seen it happen too many times to envy your married neighbors. Still, when the nights grow long and the wind howls through the cracks, you sometimes wish for someone to share the burden, even if only to take turns scraping the mold off the bread. You glance around your one room domain, the low table littered with crumbs and splinters, the stool with its wobbly leg, the fire that has long since gone out. A bundle of dried herbs hangs from the ceiling, their scent half lost to the smoke that stains the rafters. You know each item intimately because there are only so many things a poor midwife can own. There is no mirror, but you know what you look like: stringy hair, chapped lips, hands like rawhide. Your mother used to say that God made midwives plain so that no one would fall in love with them and distract them from their work. You are not sure you believe her, but you appreciate the excuse. Before you step outside, you tuck a small bag of supplies under your arm: some herbs for calming nerves, a rusty knife for cutting cords, a piece of linen for swaddling, and a wooden cross just in case. You never know what you will need, and you would rather be prepared. It is not much, but it is all you have. You take a deep breath, taste the dampness, and step out into another day. The air is thick with the smell of smoke and mud and animals. Your neighbors nod as you pass, their faces unreadable, their eyes a little too sharp. They know who you are, what you do. They know you carry life and death in your hands, even if they pretend otherwise. The sun has not yet risen, and already you are tired, but there is no time for rest. Somewhere in the village, someone needs you, and you must go. You pull on your old leather shoes, cracked and softened from years of trudging through mud, manure, and things best left unnamed. They are more holes than shoe now, but you have grown used to the cold seeping in between your toes. You tie the thin leather straps around your ankles and brace yourself for the daily journey. What awaits outside is not so much a street as it is a living river of filth. There is no pavement, no gravel, only mud, ruts, and the discarded refuse of your fellow villagers, all blending into a slippery, treacherous path that dares you to walk upright. Every step is a calculated risk. You know the places where the mud is deepest, where the ground will try to swallow your foot whole, and where the livestock have left steaming, aromatic reminders of their passing. You step lightly, but there is no avoiding the mess. The mud clings to your shoes, weighing you down, tugging at the hem of your skirt until it is as filthy as everything else in this world. As you make your way, you pass by the butcher's stall, where a mound of offal lies rotting in the morning chill. Flies have already gathered, fat and slow. The smell is an assault, but it is not the worst you will encounter today. A stray dog noses at the heap, pausing only to bare its teeth at you before retreating into the mist. You nod to the butcher's wife, who returns your greeting with a wary glance. Her daughter is with child, and soon she will come to you for help. Children dart past you, barefoot and shrieking, their laughter echoing between the wooden houses. You envy them for their ignorance. They have not yet learned to count the days by funerals and births, to look for omens in the cries of crows or the color of the sky at dawn. For them, the mud is only another game. The baker's boy stands at his door, arms crossed, watching you with an unreadable expression. You remember bringing him into this world many years ago, a squalling bundle that nearly killed his mother in the process. She never forgave you for the pain, though you saved them both. Now, every time you pass, you sense the weight of old grudges, as though the act of birth itself had been a personal affront. A group of men shuffle by, shoulders hunched, hats pulled low. They smell of smoke and ale, and you know better than to meet their gaze. Midwives are a necessary evil, and while you are greeted with nods in daylight, you have heard the whispers at night. Stories of midwives consorting with devils, muttering curses or selling secrets for a handful of coins. You keep your eyes down and your pace steady, reminding yourself that you are needed even if you are not wanted. The church looms at the end of the street, its bell silent for now. You know that inside, the priest is already at prayer, asking forgiveness for sins he cannot name. He glances out the window as you pass, his face set in a frown. You are, to him, a problem to be tolerated. He would rather see all babies baptized by his own hand, all women saved by holy water, instead of your foul smelling herbs and whispered words. But when blood starts to flow and the cries of women echo through the night, it is your name they shout, not his. You turn down a narrow alley where the mud is even deeper and the walls seem to close in around you. Here, the poorest of the poor live crammed together, their windows broken, their doors hanging from their hinges. A woman leans out, her face pale and lined, and calls to you with a hoarse whisper. You nod. She will need you soon, by the look of her belly. There is never any end to the need. At last, you reach the house you were summoned to. It is no better than your own, the door hanging askew, a thin curl of smoke rising from the chimney. The air outside is heavy with the scent of damp wool, burning peat, and old sorrow. You pause, steadying yourself. There is work to be done inside, work that will not wait, and you must leave your own aches and worries at the threshold. You knock once, twice, and the door creaks open. Inside, the world is no brighter. A woman sits hunched by the fire, her face twisted in pain, her hair matted with sweat. A man paces nearby, wringing his hands, his eyes darting to you with a mixture of hope and terror. You know what he is thinking. Will you save his wife, his child, or will you bring death into his house? You step inside, your feet leaving muddy prints on the floor. The air is thick and close, heavy with fear. The road here was slippery and treacherous, but the path that lies ahead is even more uncertain. You set your bag down, roll up your sleeves, and prepare to begin. Outside, The village goes about its business, indifferent to your struggle. The mud will still be there when you leave, and tomorrow you will walk this same filthy road again. For now, there is only this woman, this child, and the work of your tired, capable hands. The fire sputters in the corner, struggling to heat a room that refuses to let go of its chill. You take a seat on the only stool that does not collapse under your weight and begin the practiced routine of observation. A midwife's eyes are her greatest tool. You have learned to see what others do not wish to acknowledge. The blue tinge around a woman's lips, the beads of sweat that are too cold, the unnatural way pain lingers long after it should have eased. Today, it is not only the birth that hangs heavy in the air. You can sense it even before you step fully into the house, a thickness, as if the shadows themselves have weight. Someone coughs in the next room, the kind of cough that rattles deep in the chest and refuses to be quieted by warm broth or prayers. You do not need to ask to know the sound. You have heard it before in too many homes, in too many seasons. The sickness moves through the village like a wolf, silent and hungry. Sometimes it takes children, sometimes it takes mothers. No one knows why it chooses one and not another. You suspect the truth is as dull and merciless as the rest of life. Bad luck, weak blood, too many mouths at the table. The mother on the bed is young, younger than you were when you first began helping women bring new lives into this world. Her hair clings to her face, and her eyes are wide with pain and something else, fear maybe, or the quiet knowledge that some stories do not end with happiness. She clutches her belly with white knuckles, her breath coming in ragged bursts. The man, her husband, or perhaps her brother, it hardly matters, hovers in the doorway, his hands twisting a rag into knots. His face is drawn, his eyes darting to the shadows where the sickness might be hiding, waiting to pounce. You know what is expected of you. You are supposed to be calm, confident, a source of comfort. You are supposed to have answers. But in truth, you carry as much fear as anyone else. There are days when you wish you could forget it all you have seen. The children coughing blood into linen rags, the purple blotches that bloom across a woman's skin, the smell of a wound that will not heal. There are days you want to run, to leave this place and all its suffering behind. But you never do. Someone must stay and do the work that no one else wants. You move quietly, washing your hands with water that smells faintly of iron and smoke. There is no soap. That is a luxury reserved for the wealthy, and you are not wealthy. Instead, you rely on boiling, on scouring, and on the thin hope that what you do will be enough. You rub your hands dry on your skirt and take a small pouch from your bag, a mixture of dried herbs meant to soothe pain and calm nerves. You know it will not cure anything serious, but sometimes belief is as powerful as medicine. The coughing in the next room grows louder, then fades into uneasy silence. You do not look up. If you start to care too much, you will not be able to work. That is another lesson the world has taught you. Sympathy is a luxury, one you cannot afford if you want to survive. The labor drags on, hour after hour. The room grows close and dark, filled with the smell of sweat and fear. You can feel the sickness outside, pressing at the walls, looking for a way in. You work quickly, cleaning the mother, muttering old words under your breath, not because you believe they have any power, but because everyone expects it, and sometimes ritual is the only comfort you have to offer. As the sky outside turns gray, the first child's cry finally pierces the gloom. Relief floods the room, sharp and fleeting. For a moment, everyone allows themselves to hope. The baby is red and squalling, angry at being pulled into such a world. You clean it, wrap it in linen, and hand it to the mother, who clings to it as though she can keep it safe by sheer force of will. But you are not done. The afterbirth must come, and with it, the risk of bleeding, of fever, of death. You keep your eyes sharp, your hands steady, your mind cold. There is no time for celebration. There is only the next task and the next. The cough in the other room starts again, rougher now, closer. You glance at the door, then back at the woman who has closed her eyes in exhaustion. The man has tears in his eyes, but whether they are for joy or fear, you cannot tell. You leave instructions, herbs to brew, cloths to change, signs to watch for, and gather your things. There will be more calls today, more sick and frightened faces, more filth and sorrow, and hope clinging like the ever present mud. Outside, the street looks the same as it did when you arrived, but you know the village has changed. Somewhere, the sickness has found a new home. You say a quiet prayer, not to the saints, but to the earth itself. May it be merciful this season. May it spare at least a few. You step back into the muck, your hands sticky with birth, and your mind already on the next house, the next cry, the next battle with death. You set your bag down by the fire, the meager flames licking at shadows, but never quite banishing them. Every midwife carries a kit of tools, and yours is no different, though you sometimes think you would be better off with a handful of rocks and a prayer. You open the worn leather pouch and lay out your treasures on a scrap of rough linen, a knife with a blade dulled and pitted by years of use, a few long, slender needles made of bone, a spool of thread that has lost its color to time, and a handful of herbs wrapped in waxed cloth. If anyone else saw these, they might wonder if you were a healer, a witch, or simply a very poor woman with very strange hobbies. The knife is for cutting the cord, though you sharpen it every morning until your hands ache. You know it is never sharp enough to your liking. Sometimes, when the blood runs too freely, you curse it under your breath, but it is all you have. The bone needles are not for sewing clothes, they are for mending torn flesh when fate is unkind and the body must be stitched back together. You learned to use them By practicing on pig's ears behind your mother's house long before you ever touched a human body. The thread is linen spun by your own hand on cold winter evenings. It must be boiled before use, though you doubt this does much to cleanse it. Still, you cling to the ritual. Rituals are the only certainty you have. The herbs are an odd assortment: dried mugwort for pain, yarrow to slow the bleeding, rue for when the baby refuses to come, lavender to calm a panicked woman, and a sprig of wolfsbane that is more for show than any practical use. You keep it because your mother kept it, and her mother before her, a talisman against evil spirits and malicious gossip. You know your tools are primitive, barely changed from those used by the ancients. In truth, you are often less a healer and more a witness to suffering, but the women you tend to believe in you, if only because there is no one else. The village has no doctor, and even if it did, no one could afford to pay him. You are the sum total of medical science here, and if that science is built on superstition and hope, well, so be it. Before each birth, you perform a small ceremony. You light a twist of dried sage, letting the smoke fill the air. You mutter words half remembered from your childhood, promises to old gods and saints alike, hedging your bets against the whims of fate. The women watch you with wide eyes, clutching talismans of their own. Sometimes you think they put more faith in your rituals than your herbs or your hands. You do not blame them. In a world ruled by chance, anything that offers a scrap of certainty is worth clinging to. You wash your hands in boiled water, as hot as you can stand, scrubbing away the filth of the streets. There is no real cleanliness in your world, only varying degrees of dirtiness, but you do what you can. You wipe your tools with a clean rag, humming a lullaby under your breath. The melody is soft and mournful, a song for children who may never be born. When the labor begins in earnest, you move with the calm of long practice. You kneel by the woman's side, murmuring encouragements and prayers. Sometimes you tell stories, tales of women who labored all night and brought forth strong, healthy babies. Sometimes you just hold their hand and let them scream. If things go well, your tools remain in your pouch, and the birth is over before the sun has risen. But more often than not, something goes wrong. The baby refuses to turn, the mother grows too weak, or the blood will not stop. Then you reach for your knife and your bone needles, your line and thread, and your bitter herbs. You do what you must, your hands moving with desperate precision. You have stitched more women than you can count, and buried more than you care to remember. When the baby finally arrives, whole or broken, living or still, you wrap it in linen and place it in the mother's arms. You bind her wounds, brew a tea of mugwort and honey, and whisper a blessing over them both. You collect your tools, now stained with blood and sorrow, and tuck them back into your pouch. You clean up what you can, burn what you must, and leave the rest to the scavenging dogs. There are no medals for your work, No celebrations. Sometimes, if you are lucky, the family will thank you with a loaf of bread or a wedge of cheese. More often, they simply close the door behind you and try to forget you were ever there. You trudge back through the streets, your pouch heavier with pain and memory than with anything of value. You wonder, not for the first time, if all your rituals and tools matter at all, or if you are merely a bystander to the slow, grinding wheel of fate. But tomorrow you will return. You will sharpen your knife, boil your thread, and say your prayers to gods who may not be listening, because that is what a midwife does. She tries, again and again, to snatch life from the jaws of death with nothing but her hands, her wits, and her ancient, pitiful tools. The church bell tolls somewhere in the distance, marking time with a cold, hollow sound that seeps through every wall and shivers along your spine. The day is not Sunday, but you feel its judgment anyway. You always do. The church watches everyone, but it watches you especially closely. You are a midwife, after all, neither quite a servant of God nor entirely a laywoman. The priests will bless a harvest and sprinkle holy water over a new barn, but when a woman's time comes, it is you they call for, not a man in a robe. This does not make you popular in their eyes. You have learned to be careful in what you say and do. There are rules here, unwritten, but no less rigid than any holy law. You know never to speak too confidently about your skills, nor to accept too much thanks for a job well done. You must always remind the family that the outcome, for good or ill, is the will of God. If a mother dies, it is his plan. If a baby is born dead, it is a test. If both survive, then it is a miracle, and the priest will be there to baptize the child and bless the house, but never to thank you. Sometimes the priest himself visits the homes of the dying. He carries a vial of oil and mutters Latin phrases that might as well be gibberish to the family. He gives you sidelong glances as if your mere presence is suspicious. If you are unlucky enough to arrive at the same time as him, you must make yourself small, lower your eyes, and step back. The church does not approve of women taking charge, especially not over matters of life and death. You know the stories they tell in hushed voices, the tales of Eve's original sin, the warnings that women are weak vessels, easily swayed by the devil and pride. You remember once, as a child, sneaking into the back of the church to hear a sermon about witches. The priest's voice thundered against the stone walls as he described women with herbs, women with secrets, women who could heal, or harm simply by knowing too much. The congregation shuddered, casting glances at the older women in the crowd. It left a mark on you, as if every eye was an accusation, every word a sentence waiting to be pronounced. This is why you keep your head down when you pass the church on your way to a birth. The priest is sometimes outside, hands clasped behind his back, watching the world from beneath heavy brows. You nod, never smile. He rarely returns the gesture, but he never looks away. Sometimes you think he is counting the days until he can find an excuse to denounce you. Still, the families need you. They may not trust you entirely, but when labor begins and blood flows, the priest will only pray. It is you who must act. But you have seen what happens if something goes wrong. The looks, the whispered conversations, the sudden coldness from neighbors who once brought you eggs and bread. You have heard the accusations: witch, sorceress, bringer of death, one bad outcome, and your life could unravel in an instant. You have learned to hide your knowledge. The church does not approve of too much learning in women, and certainly not in someone like you. You know the names of dozens of herbs, the tricks to turn a breech baby, the secrets to stopping a hemorrhage, but you share them only with those who need them, and only in whispers. To the rest of the world, you are just a woman who helps with births, nothing more. Sometimes you watch the priest as he gives his sermons, warning against sin and pride, describing hellfire and eternal torment for those who stray from the righteous path. You notice how the villagers' eyes drift toward you just for a moment, as if weighing your soul and finding it wanting. You wonder how many prayers have been said for your salvation, how many silent pleas for God to spare the village from your supposed wickedness. You cling to rituals, not out of faith, but as armor, a whispered prayer before each birth, a sign of the cross drawn in flower on the door, a promise to dedicate every child you help deliver to God's protection. These gestures soothe the family, and sometimes they soothe you as well. But you know, deep down, that if you ever draw too much attention, if you ever fail at the wrong moment, none of it will save you. Every so often, there is talk of a woman burned in another village, accused of witchcraft after too many mothers died in her care. The story spreads quickly, growing darker and more twisted with every telling. You hear it at the market, in the whispers of women carrying baskets of turnips and onions, their eyes wide with fear and fascination. You nod along, keep your face blank, and hope they never decide to tell that story about you. You would like to believe that the church is only concerned with saving souls, but you know it is also concerned with control, with reminding everyone that life and death are not in the hands of ordinary people, least of all women like you. So you stay quiet and careful, and you pray, if not to their God, then at least to the old spirits, that you may be left in peace for one more season. But peace is a rare thing for a midwife. You finish your work, pack your tools, and slip away before the priest can ask too many questions. The bell tolls again, and the village bends its head, hoping that God, or fate, or simple luck will spare them for another day. Night falls over the village, not like a velvet curtain, but like a sodden rag, heavy and suffocating, pressed against the windows and seeping under every door. There are no street lights here, nothing to cut the gloom but the uncertain flicker of hearth fires behind closed shutters and the trembling glow of your own tallow candle. You never truly sleep at night, not as others do. Instead, you doze lightly, always half listening for the pounding of fists at your door and the frantic, breathless voices that bring with them the same urgent news: someone is dying and you are needed. Tonight, the summons comes later than usual. You wake to the sound of footsteps, hurrying and slipping through the muck outside, and then the desperate rapping on your door. The messenger is a boy, barely old enough to remember his own birth, though he probably does, in this place. His words tumble out in a rush, all jumbled together. His mother is screaming, "There is blood. There is so much blood. Please come. Please hurry." You do not need to ask which woman it is, nor what kind of night awaits you. You gather your tools with hands that are practiced, but not steady. You have learned that fear is the price of your calling, a weight you must bear whether you want to or not. Every time you are called in the dead of night, you wonder if it will be the last time, your last chance to help, or your last chance to leave your own mark in this world before fate catches up with you. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders, tie your shoes, and step out into the freezing darkness. The village looks different at night. The mud is deeper, the ruts more treacherous, and every shadow seems to hide something that wishes you harm. You hurry, head down, boots squelching in filth. The silence is broken only by your breath and the far off howling of wolves in the black forest that crouches at the village's edge. You are not sure what is more dangerous, the wild animals or the men who sometimes wander the roads after dark, drunk and looking for trouble. You reach the house, its door swinging open in a frantic invitation. Inside, chaos reigns. The woman is sprawled across her bed, legs splayed, nightdress already soaked through with blood. Her eyes are wild, darting from face to face as if searching for someone who can promise her that it will all be all right. The rest of the family huddles nearby, pale and silent, as if fearing that their very presence might tip the scales toward death. You take charge. There is no time for pleasantries, no time for comfort. You bark orders. Tell the family to heat water, tear rags, clear the room. You roll up your sleeves, hands already stained with birth and loss, and set to work. The air is thick with the copper tang of blood and the sour stink of terror. You have seen this before, too many times. Sometimes you can turn the tide, sometimes not. You whisper to the woman, telling her to breathe, to push, to fight. Your voice is rough, but it is the only anchor she has in this storm. You press your hand to her belly, feeling for the life inside, searching for hope in a world that rarely gives it. The blood keeps coming, hot and endless, and you mutter prayers you do not believe. The old words, the old rituals, if they have power, it is only because you have nothing else. Hours pass, or perhaps it is only minutes. Time does not flow in these moments. It stutters and stalls, caught on the sharp edge between life and death. The woman shudders, cries out, and then grows terribly quiet. You know this silence. You have seen it before. The hush that comes when the body can take no more, when the soul is slipping away. You work faster, hands moving on their own, stitching, binding, packing herbs into wounds, forcing more bitter tea between cracked lips. You shout for someone to hold a lamp higher, to bring more water, to pray harder. You do not stop to think about what happens if you fail. There is only this moment, this battle. Sometimes, by some miracle, the woman rallies. Tonight, she does not. The blood will not stop. You see the light fading from her eyes, her hand slipping from yours, and you know, before anyone else does, that she is gone. There is a terrible moment of stillness. The family waits for you to speak, to say something, to explain, but you have no words that can make this right. A baby is born in the darkness, weak and silent. You try to coax it to life, rubbing its tiny chest, whispering encouragement, begging it to breathe. For a moment, it seems as if it might. Then it too goes quiet, limp in your hands. Another double loss, two more names you will carry with you, woven into the heavy shroud of memory that wraps tighter around your shoulders with every passing year. You clean the mother, swaddle the child, do what you can to restore some dignity to the scene. The family wails and keens, their grief filling the tiny house like smoke. You wish you could leave, but you cannot, not yet. There is ritual to be done, small tasks that will not change anything, but must be completed all the same. You step out into the night, numb and shivering, your hands sticky with blood and failure. The sky is just beginning to pale in the east. Another day is coming, and soon the world will wake. You trudge back through the mud, thinking of nothing, feeling nothing, hoping for nothing. This is the truth of your life. Every night may bring death, and every morning may find you more hollowed out than before. And yet, tomorrow, if someone comes pounding on your door, you will go again, because that is what midwives do. They bear witness to the darkness over and over until there is nothing left to take. You return home with the sky still gray and unfriendly, your body aching with exhaustion that does not care about day or night. You think briefly of sleep, but there is no time. Word spreads quickly in a village like this. There is always another woman in labor, another family at the edge of panic. You gulp down a mouthful of cold porridge and drag yourself back into the mud to yet another home that smells of fear and hope and old wood smoke. Labor, they say, is the province of women. Only women bleed and scream and curse the world as they bring forth new life. But what they never mention is how much labor belongs to you, the midwife. For every woman writhing on a straw pallet, you kneel beside her, your knees bruised and stiff, your hands red and raw. You do not simply attend a birth, you fight your way through it, muscle and will pitted against the frailty of flesh and the whims of fate. You know every trick that has ever failed to make the process easier. You coax the mother to walk, to squat, to kneel. You knead her back and murmur encouragements, none of which ever feel true. You brew the bitterest tea and hope she does not vomit it back up. You light candles, recite prayers, tie red ribbons around her wrists, or place a knife beneath her bed to frighten away evil spirits. You have never seen an evil spirit, only pain and fear and blood, but rituals give the illusion of control, and you will not rob a woman of what little comfort she has. The hours grind past, sometimes slowly, sometimes in a fevered rush. There are nights when the baby is eager to be born, and you barely have time to wash your hands before new cries fill the air. But more often, labor stretches into a battle of endurance, the mother weakening with every contraction. You watch her face, white, then flushed, then gray. You recognize the look of despair the moment she starts to beg for release. Sometimes you lie and say it will be over soon. Sometimes you do not bother. When the head finally crowns, it feels like victory, though you know better than to relax. You are ready with your hands, your knife, your thread, your boiled rags. You help guide the baby out, praying the cord is not wrapped around its neck, praying it cries. The first scream is always a relief, a small defiance against death. You clean the infant, cut the cord, wrap it in linen. The mother's face softens for a moment, wonder and exhaustion mingling as she holds her child, if she is strong enough. But you are never truly done. The afterbirth must come, and this is when many women falter. Blood pools and soaks into the mattress, sometimes pouring out in a sudden, terrifying flood. You press down on the belly, urge the placenta to come, mutter all the old words for good luck. If it does not come, you know how to reach inside. Careful, always careful, though you hate this work most of all. You feel for the slippery mass and pull it free, hoping you do not tear anything, hoping you do not unleash even more blood. Sometimes, even if you do everything right, it is not enough. The mother shivers, sweats, her breath growing fast and shallow. Her lips go pale, her eyes roll back. You have seen death come like this, silent and quick, as though it has been lurking under the bed all along. If the bleeding will not stop, you pack rags into the wound, offer the bitterest herbs, call for someone to pray. You have nothing else, no magic, no true medicine, only your own stubbornness and the superstitions handed down from generations of desperate women. There are other dangers too, ones that creep in after the birth: fever, infection, the slow rotting that takes days to reveal itself. You know the signs and try to catch them early, but the family may not call you back. Sometimes they do not want to pay, or they believe a priest can do more with holy water than you can with your dirty hands. You have lost count of the women you have seen die days or weeks after you have left, their husbands cursing your name in the market as if you summoned death yourself. No matter the outcome, Your work does not end with the birth. You must clean the mother, strip the soiled bedding, burn what cannot be washed. You tend to the baby if it survives, swaddling it against the cold, hoping its first breaths are not its last. The family might offer you a meal, cold bread, maybe a slice of cheese, a cup of weak ale. You choke it down, too tired to care about the taste. If the birth has gone well, the family will look at you with cautious gratitude, as if you are both savior and threat. If the birth has gone badly, you become the subject of whispers and suspicion. Either way, you gather your tools, blood-stained and worn, and head back through the mud to your own cold bed, knowing you will likely be called again before the night is out. You do this not for glory or gratitude, but because no one else will. This is your burden, to kneel in the filth, to catch new life in your tired hands, to patch what is broken and mourn what is lost. Each labor is a battle, and you are the only soldier, armed with nothing but rags, bitter tea, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Tomorrow, the ordeal will begin again. You will rise before dawn, your body screaming in protest, and wade back into the river of pain and hope, because you are the midwife, and that is what midwives do. You would think that by now you would be used to death, that after so many years and so many bedsides and so many funerals, it would fade into the background like the endless gray drizzle outside your window. But it does not. Death never truly becomes ordinary, even if, in your world, it is as much a part of daily life as bread and mud and the itch of lice. You have learned to recognize its approach by the smallest things. A sudden hush in the room, the way the mother's eyes glaze over, the silence of a family that has seen this all before. In this village, no one bothers to count how many women die in childbirth. It happens so often that it barely raises an eyebrow. There are always more women, always more babies. The graveyard behind the church grows year by year, the crosses crowding in on one another, names quickly fading from wood and memory alike. Sometimes, when you pass by on your way to a birth, you pause and try to remember which grave belongs to which woman. Usually, you cannot. They are all lost together, woven into the silent, damp earth. When a woman dies under your care, the first thing you must do is make her look peaceful. You close her eyes, wipe the blood from her face, arrange her hands just so. The family gathers, weeping or silent, or sometimes simply exhausted, as if sorrow is just another household chore to be completed before nightfall. If the baby survives, you wrap it in linen and place it beside the dead mother, as if proximity alone could keep it alive. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. You have learned to keep your own tears hidden. There is no time for mourning. The living need you more than the dead, and there is always another birth to attend, another mother on the edge. You bury your grief under layers of routine. You pack your tools, scrub the blood from your hands, and walk back through the mud to your own lonely bed. If you lie awake at night, Staring into the darkness, you tell yourself it is only the cold that keeps you shivering. Word spreads quickly in the village when a woman dies. Some blame fate, some blame the mother for being weak or for angering God. A few, too many, blame you. It is easier for them to believe in a villain than in bad luck or nature's cruelty. You have learned to keep your head down for a few days after a death to avoid the market and the well. You know the looks, the whispers. She tried her best, some say. She should have done more, say others. And then, just as quickly, life moves on. The next wedding is planned, the next belly swells, and you are called again, as if nothing happened. It is not only mothers who die. Sometimes the baby is born silent, a little blue thing that never draws breath. Sometimes both are lost together, and you find yourself cleaning a bed that will never be slept in again, wrapping a tiny bundle for a grave, watching as the family's hope drains away in silence. You try not to count these losses, but they accumulate anyway, a private tally you keep behind your ribs. The worst is when you have to break the news. You have seen grown men crumble, mothers in law shriek and tear at their hair, children wander into the room, not understanding why their world has changed. You have learned to be gentle, to speak softly, to answer the same questions again and again. Was there nothing more to be done? Did she suffer? Could you have saved her? You give them the only answers you can, the answers you hope are true. Even if you doubt them yourself, there are some families who never forgive you, who cross themselves when you pass or spit in your direction. There are others who press bread or cheese into your hands, thanking you for trying, even if you failed. You have learned not to expect gratitude, not to rely on kindness. The only certainty is that you will be called again and you will go because someone must. You try to remember the women who have died in your care. Sometimes you recall their faces, their voices, the way they gripped your hand, or cursed you, or begged you to save them. Other times they blur together, lost among all the others. You carry them with you anyway, a heavy weight that grows with each passing year. Some nights, their faces come back in dreams, accusing and silent. Other nights, you dream of your own death, a quiet end, alone in your bed, with no one to close your eyes or clean your blood. If you envy anything, it is not the lives of your neighbors, but their ability to forget. You envy the way they return to their daily chores, their laughter, their squabbles over chickens and turnips. You envy the way they can accept death as just another fact of life, no more remarkable than the changing seasons or the rain that never ends. But you are a midwife. You are expected to be strong, to be wise, to be unbreakable. You bury your grief deep behind routines and rituals, behind the careful mask you wear for the village. You remind yourself that for every woman you lose, there are others you save, babies that cry, mothers who live to see another spring. This is the lie you tell yourself, the small comfort that keeps you going. And so, when morning comes, you rise again. You scrub your hands, gather your tools, and step into the muddy street, ready to face whatever waits for you next. Because there is no other choice. In your world, death is routine, but you are the one who must bear witness again and again until you too are forgotten. Payment for your work is never guaranteed, nor is it what you might wish it to be. There is no coin waiting for you at the end of a sleepless night, no gold pressed into your palm for guiding a new life safely into this cold, damp world. Instead, your reward is as haphazard as the births themselves. A wedge of stale cheese, a bundle of firewood, half a loaf of bread so hard you could use it to mend a hole in your wall. Sometimes you receive a skein of wool, the promise of a chicken come spring, or a handful of bruised apples that barely survived last winter's frost. These small offerings are pressed into your hands with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment, as if the family knows the debt is never truly paid. You have learned not to expect much. In lean years, the gifts grow thinner, and you must smile and thank the family even as your stomach growls and your fire burns low. Sometimes there is no payment at all, only a muttered apology and the hope that you will understand. Of course, you understand. You always do. What choice do you have? You cannot refuse the next desperate knock on your door simply because last week's family was too poor or too proud to give you a handful of eggs. The village would never forgive you. In their eyes, a midwife's duty is sacred, and the price is beside the point. Once in a while, you receive something truly valuable, a strip of good linen, a pot of honey, a small sack of flour. These treasures are hoarded away, saved for the darkest days of winter, when hunger bites and cold creeps under your door. You sometimes wonder if the local baker's wife remembers that you brought her twins into the world, or if the farmer whose cow you once treated will recall his debt when you go hungry. Such debts are rarely honored, but you cling to the hope that they might be, just as you cling to every scrap of cloth and crust of bread. Then there are the payments given in words, promises to help repair your roof before the next rain, to mend your fence, to chop your firewood when there's time. You have learned to smile and nod, knowing that these promises will likely be forgotten as soon as the baby's first cries fade. Still, you let them talk. You let them believe they are generous and fair, that you are lucky to serve them. Not all payments are gifts, however. Some are given grudgingly, with hard eyes and tighter lips, as if you are little better than a beggar or a thief. In these homes, you are careful not to linger, careful not to take more than is offered. You know what it is to be accused of greed, to have a woman die, and hear her husband complain that you charged too much for your trouble. You would almost rather receive nothing than be blamed for both death and debt. Worse still are the times when payment is not only denied, but twisted against you. If a birth goes badly, if a baby is born weak, or a mother grows sick, there is always someone eager to blame you for misfortune. They say your herbs were too bitter, your hands too rough, your prayers too strange. They say you took too much or that you demanded more than was your due. Sometimes you hear the word curse whispered behind your back, or witch, or thief. The village is quick to forget your sleepless nights and your bloody hands when food runs short or sorrow runs high. You have been cheated more times than you can count. Once, a farmer's wife promised you a chicken come Easter, but Easter came and went, and the chicken never appeared. Another time, you helped a woman through 3 days of agony, only to be paid with a single rotten turnip. You have grown wise to such tricks, but there is little you can do. To refuse a call is to invite ruin. To demand your due is to risk being cast out. You walk a narrow line, balancing gratitude and resentment, pride and necessity. You do your best to make use of what you are given. You patch your clothes with odd scraps of cloth, feed yourself on broth made from bones and cabbage leaves, and burn even the smallest sticks of wood in your hearth. You have learned the value of thrift, of making do. In this life, nothing is wasted. Every crust, every rag, every half spoken promise. Sometimes, when you sit alone at night, you wonder if you will ever have more than this. You imagine a life where your work is respected, where your table is full, and your bed is warm. You dream, foolishly, of gold coins and silver cups, of being able to rest for a single day without worrying about the next meal. But these are just dreams. You wake each morning to the same cold, the same hunger, the same endless debt. You keep a mental ledger of what you are owed and by whom, but you know it will never be balanced. The world does not work that way, not for women like you. Your wealth is measured in lives saved and lost, in gratitude that fades and promises that break. Yet you keep going, keep answering every call, keep accepting every meager payment with a nod and a smile, because the work must be done, because someone has to do it, and because in the end, even a crust of bread and a promise are better than nothing at all. Rumor is a living thing in your village, as restless and hungry as the stray dogs that haunt the edges of the fields. It slinks from house to house, curls around chimney smoke, hides under eaves. No one sees it, but everyone feels it. A chill on the back of the neck, a prickle of doubt, a tightening of the mouth when you pass by. As a midwife, you live in constant negotiation with this shadow. You know that your good reputation is a brittle shield, one that can shatter with a single misplaced word or a poorly timed death. The rumors never start in the open. They begin as whispers, exchanged between women while drawing water at the well or picking over bruised apples at the market. Sometimes you catch just a scrap, your name twisted in someone's mouth, or a hissing witch half swallowed by laughter. Other times, the gossip floats closer, carried on the wind like the smell of wood smoke or the church's funeral incense. You try to ignore it, to keep your head down and your hands busy, but you cannot unhear what is said. She uses strange herbs, they murmur. She talks to herself. She knows when a baby will die. You know how these stories start. All it takes is a birth gone wrong, a mother who does not survive, a child who is born blue and silent. The pain of grief is like a festering wound, and people are desperate for someone to blame. You, with your knowledge of blood and bone, your pouch of dried plants, and your muttered prayers, make the easiest target. Even when you save a life, there is suspicion. Some think you have made a bargain, if not with God, then with something older and darker. No woman should know so much, the men mutter, while their wives nod in silent agreement. The worst are the stories that spread in the quiet hours after a death, when a family sits together, staring at an empty cradle or an unmade bed. It was the midwife's doing, someone will say. She brought the sickness in her shadow. Soon, the story grows teeth. She stole the child's soul. She curses the women who do not pay her well. The next day, you find your gate marked with a smear of ash or a sprig of rowan placed there to keep you out. Sometimes the rumors become bolder, whispered not behind your back, but to your face. Children chant after you as you walk. Witch, witch, midwife, witch. Their mothers drag them away, but you see the fear in their eyes. Once, an old man spat at your feet in the street. Another time, you found a dead mouse on your doorstep, its neck twisted, a warning written in blood and silence. You have learned to move carefully through this minefield. You keep your eyes down, your answers short, your voice calm. You offer no advice unless asked. Never correct a man. Never boast of a life saved or a birth managed well. You let the priest take credit when a baby thrives after a baptism, nodding along with his sermons about the power of faith and the dangers of pride. If a woman dies, you stand at the back of the funeral, silent and small, and hope that no one remembers your face too well. Yet for all your caution, you cannot escape the rumor's reach. Even your friends, if such a thing can exist for someone like you, are wary. They might share a loaf of bread or a warm word in private, but in public they keep their distance. The village is a place of secrets, and everyone knows that the safest secret is one that points away from themselves. It is safer to agree with the gossip than to defend you, safer to cross themselves than to meet your eye. There are moments when the suspicion grows so thick you can taste it. You lie awake at night, listening to the wind rattle your shutters, wondering if this will be the year the rumors become something more. You have heard stories from other villages, stories of women dragged from their homes, beaten, burned, drowned, accused of things no one could prove and everyone believed. The stories are always told in low voices, with eyes averted, as if speaking them aloud might bring bad luck. But you hear them all the same. You know what can happen when fear and grief fester unchecked. You try to protect yourself in the old ways. You scatter salt at your threshold, hang bunches of dried herbs from your rafters, draw small marks on your door at night. Some do it for protection from evil. You do it for protection from your neighbors. In your world, superstition is both shield and snare. Too little, and you are called reckless. Too much, and you are called a witch. Still, you go on. You answer every knock at your door, attend every birth, risk your life for neighbors who would sooner turn on you than thank you. You tell yourself it is just the way of things, that rumor, like rain and death, is simply part of the landscape, but you never truly believe it. Deep down, you know that in this place, safety is an illusion, and trust is just another word for not yet betrayed. The rumors always linger, a low hum beneath the day's noise. No matter how many lives you save, no matter how careful you are, you walk every step on a knife's edge, one whisper away from disaster. And so you endure, silent and watchful, because you must, because the work never ends, and the shadows are always hungry for a new story to tell. You would think, perhaps, that your closest allies would be other women, those who know firsthand the risks and pain of childbirth, the constant threat of hunger, the relentless demands of family and field. Sometimes this is true, but only in the most cautious and conditional sense. In the village, every woman is both a potential friend and a potential betrayer. Survival demands both. Your daily rounds bring you into constant contact with the women of the village. They call you to tend their daughters, to examine odd fevers or stubborn rashes, to offer herbs that will bring on a late period or ease a monthly agony. Sometimes it feels like you are the keeper of all their secrets, whose cycle is late, whose husband drinks too much, which marriage is crumbling behind closed doors. They know you are discreet. They rely on your silence, even as they fear what you know. There is a certain intimacy between you and the women you serve. In the quiet hours before dawn, you have heard confessions whispered into your ear, hopes, regrets, even the small wishes that a husband might never hear. You have held hands slick with sweat, caught tears and blood in the same linen rag. You have seen the strongest women break, and the gentlest curse the world and every man in it. Yet this intimacy never fully ripens into trust. It cannot, not in this place. Each woman knows how quickly rumor can turn, how loyalty can sour in a single night. A neighbor one day can become an accuser the next, and no one wants to risk being swept up in your misfortune if the wind changes. They keep their distance, always polite, always grateful, but never quite your friends. You have learned to move carefully through this social web. You accept gifts, but do not linger. You answer questions honestly, but never say more than is necessary. You know that sharing one secret can cost you 100 others. When women gather to wash clothes in the stream or spin wool in the long evenings, you are welcome to join, but you are never truly one of them. Their laughter dims when you approach, and their stories grow vague and cautious. Still, your expertise is indispensable. When the pain comes, or the blood will not stop, or a child will not nurse, they call for you, not the priest or the village elder. They trust you with their bodies, if not with their hearts. In a world ruled by men and the church, this gives you a peculiar power, one that is both envied and resented. You sense the wariness in their eyes, the calculation behind every question. How much does she know? What might she say if pressed? There are women who owe you more than they can say. You have ended unwanted pregnancies, risking your own life as well as theirs. You have mended torn flesh and nursed broken spirits. Some have pressed your hands in gratitude, whispered prayers for your safety, slipped you extra bread when no one was looking. But there are others, just as many, who keep you at arm's length, careful never to be alone with you, careful never to defend you in public. For every act of kindness, there is a balancing act of caution. You notice how, after a difficult birth or a public quarrel, the distance between you and the other women seems to widen. A mother whose child died may avoid your eyes for weeks, as if your very presence is a reminder of loss. Wives who have heard the latest rumors about witches draw their children close, watching you with suspicion. You cannot blame them. The same fear that keeps you isolated keeps them safe. Sometimes you long for simple friendship, someone to share a meal with, to laugh with, to sit by the fire and remember better days. But you know that the cost is too high. To be a midwife is to stand apart, to listen but not speak, to know but not reveal. Every secret you carry is a double edged blade. The very knowledge that makes you useful is the knowledge that could destroy you. On rare evenings, when you feel especially alone, you remember how it used to be when you were younger, before the burdens of experience settled on your shoulders like a second skin. Once, you believed that women would stand together, that shared suffering would bind you closer than blood. Now you know better. Shared suffering is its own country, with borders as rigid as any king's decree. There are, of course, moments of genuine connection. A mother who invites you to her table for a meal of potatoes and cabbage. A young woman who gifts you a woven bracelet. A widow who tells you stories of her youth in exchange for stories of your own. These small acts of kindness glimmer in the gloom, and you treasure them more than any payment in cheese or wool. But you do not fool yourself. They are fragile, easily broken. At the end of the day, you return to your own cold house, the night pressing against the windows, your head heavy with other people's secrets. The village women go back to their families, to the warmth of their crowded homes, their laughter muffled behind walls you cannot enter. You are needed, you are respected, sometimes even feared, but you are never truly part of their world. You tell yourself that this is the price of your knowledge, that you would not trade your skills for any friendship or favor. But in the darkness, when you are most honest, you admit that you are lonely, and that the hardest part of being a midwife is not the blood or the danger, but the distance that can never be crossed. Loneliness is your oldest companion, so familiar now that you almost do not notice it. It follows you from house to house, clinging to your skirts like a shadow, whispering to you in the moments between one crisis and the next. In a village where every other person seems to belong to someone, wife, mother, daughter, friend, you are always apart. Even when you stand in a crowded room, you stand alone. You understand why it must be so. You know too much, and people are wary of those who carry the weight of secrets. Each time you cross a threshold to help a birthing woman, you step into a world where life and death hang in the balance. You see things that others would rather not acknowledge: the trembling, the tears, the raw and bloody truth beneath the surface of daily life. When you leave, you carry it with you, and the house feels different to its inhabitants, colder, perhaps, touched by something uncanny. Your presence is necessary, but never welcome. In your loneliest moments, you wonder what it would be like to belong, to have someone waiting for you at the end of the day, to share the weight of sorrow and small joys. A child's laughter, a warm body in bed beside you, the comfort of another voice in the darkness. These are luxuries reserved for others. You make do with silence, with the creak of your chair and the sound of your own breath echoing in the chill of your home. You do not let yourself grow close to anyone, not really. A midwife cannot afford friendship, much less love. Any bond could become a weakness, something for others to use against you. You have seen it happen before: a neighbor's daughter who stood too close, a cousin who lingered too long over a cup of tea. All it takes is one envious tongue, one angry husband, and suddenly your name is dragged into the gossip, your motives questioned, your safety put at risk. You learn to draw lines. You help when asked. You answer when called, but you never linger. You never invite anyone in. Fear is the other half of your loneliness. It keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. You lock your door at night, wedge a heavy chair beneath the handle, and check the shutters twice before you dare to sleep. Every unfamiliar sound outside makes your heart beat faster: the creak of a branch, the distant bark of a dog, the low murmur of men's voices drifting on the wind. You know that you are never more than one misfortune away from disaster. Some nights you dream of angry faces at your door, of torches and shouting, of hands reaching for you in the dark. You wake sweating, tangled in your blankets, your mouth dry with terror. You know how easily the tide can turn. A string of bad births, a single death too many, a rumor that catches fire. No matter how skilled you are, no matter how many lives you save, all it takes is a whisper to undo everything. In this village, mercy is fleeting, and justice is whatever the loudest voice says it is. You trust no one fully, not even your own kin. Blood means little when fear runs deep. You have seen a cousin accused and cast out after a bad winter, her family too afraid to defend her. You have seen daughters turn on mothers, sisters on sisters. Sometimes you think it would be better to be a stranger, to drift from village to village, leaving no ties behind. But you know that a stranger fares no better. Loneliness and danger are everywhere. At least here you know the lay of the land. Despite your caution, you cannot help but feel the ache of isolation. You listen to laughter from neighboring houses, the warmth of shared meals and shared burdens. The joy of others is a reminder of what you lack. There are days when the silence feels heavier than your own bones, pressing down on your chest until it is hard to breathe. You keep busy. You mend your own clothes, chop your own wood, tend to your small garden when the weather allows. You collect herbs and dry them in neat bundles, grind them with steady hands. Work is a kind of armor, a way to keep the worst thoughts at bay. If your hands are moving, your mind does not wander too far into dangerous territory. Sometimes, in moments of rare honesty, a woman will thank you more warmly than necessary, squeeze your hand just a little too long. You sense in these gestures a flicker of understanding, maybe even compassion, but you know better than to encourage it. You smile, you step away, you leave before it becomes more. It is safer that way. You tell yourself that you are strong, that loneliness is a small price to pay for survival. You are your own protection, your own company, your own confidant. But the truth is that fear and solitude wear you down day by day. You feel it in the heaviness of your limbs, in the emptiness of your house, in the way your voice sometimes sounds strange to your own ears after days without conversation. Still, you endure. You have no other choice. The village needs you, even if it will never truly welcome you. You waken each day, gather your tools, and face the world as best you can. Loneliness and fear are your constant shadows, but you walk on step by muddy step because the alternative is to stop, and stopping is the one thing you are most afraid of. If there is one lesson you have learned above all others, it is this: you do not get to choose when or how you are needed. Your life is not your own. There are no holidays, no true days of rest, and certainly no such thing as saying no. You might as well wish for a summer without rain or a winter without hunger. In the village, the needs of others command you, and you must answer. You sometimes wonder what it would be like to decide, just once, to ignore a summons, to roll over in bed and pull the blanket over your head when the frantic knocking starts in the dark, to close your eyes to the candle flickering in a neighbor's window, a signal, a silent plea. But you know that such fantasies are more dangerous than they are comforting. The very idea of refusal is a luxury reserved for those with less at stake. You are a midwife. You are not allowed to be tired, to be sick, to be afraid, or to be selfish. Your work is not confined to the births themselves, though they are the most dramatic and the most visible. You are called for fevers and faintings, for women's troubles, for wounds and coughs and bad dreams. If a child will not stop crying, the mother calls for you. If a man cannot get out of bed, his wife comes running. You are summoned to advise on which herbs to brew, which roots to chew, How best to bury the afterbirth to avoid bad luck. The entire village seems to believe you possess the solution to every small catastrophe. There is no pattern to the calls. Sometimes you are summoned in the dead of night. Sometimes, just as you have settled at your table with a bowl of soup you have managed to coax into being. Sometimes you are in the middle of washing your hair, or mending a torn sleeve, or finally sitting down to rest aching feet. It does not matter. You set everything aside and go. If you are slow to answer, the worry grows. Did the midwife fall ill? Did she refuse to help? Whispers start, and you have no appetite for gossip directed at your own door. You move through your days with the sluggishness of someone who has never slept enough, whose bones have never fully warmed. Your mind is always half on the next emergency, the next house, the next cry for help. Your life is a patchwork of interrupted moments, cold meals, unfinished chores, sleep broken into scraps and tatters. Even in your rare hours of rest, you do not let yourself relax. At any moment, the village might need you. It is as if you live in a permanent state of readiness, an animal forever startled, waiting for the next blow. You envy those who can simply stop. The old men on their benches, the children in their games, even the women who gather by the well for gossip. None of them are expected to drop everything at a moment's notice. Their obligations are clear, bounded by the daylight and the season. Yours are endless. When you do manage to sleep, your dreams are filled with imagined cries, hands tugging at your arm, voices calling from darkened doorways. Sometimes you wonder if the village even sees you as a person, or merely a collection of hands and knowledge. You are expected to perform, to fix, to endure. There is no one to ask how you are feeling, no one to cover your duties if you fall ill, if you show weakness, if you so much as limp or cough. It becomes a topic of concern and, more dangerously, of suspicion. What good is a midwife who cannot walk, who will trust a healer who cannot heal herself? You have, on occasion, been called upon when you yourself were sick, burning with fever, or shivering with chills. You have dragged yourself across muddy fields, lungs tight and head pounding, because there is no alternative. If you did not go, who would? The thought of letting someone die because you were tired or ill is unbearable, and yet the thought of dying because you refuse to rest is only slightly less so. Still, you push on. You must. The truth is, you are the last line, the final hope, the scapegoat, and the savior in equal measure. When things go well, you are tolerated. When things go poorly, you are blamed. But whether they love you or hate you, need you or fear you, they cannot do without you. The village's rhythm is tied to your steps, even if they pretend otherwise. There is a sort of pride in this, though it is the pride of a beast of burden, not a queen. You carry on because you must. You are the thread that binds the community together in times of blood and panic and need. There are moments, few and far between, when a grateful smile, a surviving mother, a wailing new child make it seem worthwhile. But these moments are not rest, nor reward. They are simply brief interludes before the next ordeal. You live without the luxury of refusal. The word no does not exist for you, except as a silent prayer in the back of your mind. You get up, you go out, you do what must be done again and again until you cannot. This is what it means to be needed, to be essential, to be trapped. You are the midwife. Rest is a dream, choice a fairy tale. Duty is your world, and it has no end. If anyone asked you what you do all day, they might expect tales of dramatic midnight births, heroic rescues, and whispered secrets. In truth, most of your days are consumed by the same unremarkable, unending chores as every other woman in the village. The world of a midwife is not all blood and miracles. Most of it is mud, ashes, and filth. Small labors that never end, never pause, never satisfy. When you are not tending to another's pain, you are tending to your own survival. Your house is small, more draft than shelter, and it demands constant vigilance. The fire needs feeding, the chimney scraping, the floor sweeping, though the dirt always wins. In the morning, you gather what little water you have managed to save in rain barrels and carry more, bucket by bucket, from the stream that runs thick with mud every spring. Your hands are cracked and red from scrubbing clothes against the river stones. Your nails always seem to harbor the scent of lye or manure. You cook your meals over the hearth, careful to eke the most out of every scrap. Turnips and beans, cabbage and barley, stretched thin with water, thickened with stale bread, flavored, if you are lucky, with a strip of fat or a pinch of salt. On rare days, a neighbor's gift means a handful of dried apples or a knob of cheese, and for a moment, the world feels less gray. Most days, you eat alone, chewing thoughtfully as the wind rattles your shutters and the cold creeps up your legs. There is always mending to be done. Your clothes, like your hopes, are patched and repatched, never truly whole. You save every scrap of cloth, every bent needle, every button that rolls under the bed. When you can spare the time, you spin wool into rough thread or unravel old garments for something that might hold another winter. The work is endless, and the reward is simply the avoidance of worse. Bare skin in January, an unpatched roof in the rainy season, a bed without even a thin, tattered blanket. You tend to your small garden when the season allows, wrestling with weeds, scaring away chickens, hoping that the hail will spare at least some of the herbs you need for your trade. You dry what you can, stringing bunches from the rafters, grinding roots with a stone pestle until your wrists ache. The sharp, bitter scent of dried mugwort and yarrow seeps into everything you own, a constant reminder of how much your life depends on things that grow stubbornly or not at all. If you are lucky enough to keep a goat or a hen, Their care becomes yet another thread in the endless tapestry of chores. The goat needs milking. The hen must be protected from foxes. The pen must be mucked out before the smell becomes unbearable. You sweep, you shovel, you scatter scraps and seed. Most days, you get nothing in return but the satisfaction of having kept another living thing alive. Some days, there is milk, an egg, a few fresh feathers to stuff into a pillow that never seems soft enough. You do not work only for yourself. The women of the village come to you with requests that have nothing to do with birthing: advice on poultices for a swollen knee, a salve for chapped lips, a tea for sleeplessness or the shakes. You help because you must, but also because it is expected, and because the world you live in is as transactional as it is communal. If you want the smallest bit of kindness in return, you must always be useful. The dirtiest work, however, is the work of cleaning up after others, after births, after deaths, after illnesses that leave their mark on beds and bodies and floors. You have seen every kind of mess a human body can make, and your hands have scrubbed it all away, mostly unnoticed and unthanked. You burn what cannot be washed, haul out the straw, beat the fleas from the bedding, wipe down the planks with sour vinegar. When the work is done, you still smell the ghosts of blood and sickness, but no one else notices. They simply move on as if the world was always clean. You are never truly clean yourself. The dirt under your nails, the stains on your sleeves, the calluses on your palms. These are badges of your station, reminders that your life is spent at the margins, elbow deep in everything that is unpleasant and necessary. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a bucket of water, hollow eyes, sallow cheeks, a face older than your years, and you wonder if anyone will remember you as anything other than a figure bent over a basin, scrubbing at stains that never quite come out. You do not complain. Complaints are as useless as prayers for an early spring. Instead, you keep moving, keep working, keep patching and boiling and sweeping, because the alternative is to be still, to let the squalor and despair seep all the way in. Work is not just survival, it is the closest thing to hope you are allowed. There are rare moments when the routine feels almost comforting: a bowl of hot broth at the end of a long day, a bed that is for once not crawling with fleas. A single tiny flower poking through the mud outside your door. You savor these scraps of beauty and order, knowing they will not last. Tomorrow, the dirt will be back, the chores will multiply, and your hands will ache just the same. You sleep lightly, as always, the sounds of the night weaving themselves through your dreams. When you wake, the chores are waiting, as they always are. The routine never ends, and neither, it seems, do you. Failure hangs heavier than winter fog in a midwife's life. You know, as everyone knows, that not every birth ends in joy. But when things go wrong, when the cries turn to wails of grief, when a tiny body grows cold, When a mother's blood refuses to stop flowing, it is always you who stands in the crosshairs. No matter how many times you have succeeded, one failure is enough to erase all the rest. You see the signs as soon as you arrive. The house feels tense, brittle with anticipation, the air thick with fear, and hope twisted together like an old rope. The women hover in doorways, whispering among themselves. The men lurk outside, pretending not to listen, their faces set in expressions of helplessness they would rather die than admit. The mother's eyes, wide with pain and terror, search your face for a promise you cannot make. You know this feeling too well. The expectation that you will conjure life from blood and chaos, and the certainty that if you fail, it will all be your fault. When a birth begins to turn, you recognize it with a cold clarity that feels like betrayal. The baby does not come, or comes the wrong way, or arrives blue and silent. The mother grows weaker with every contraction, her breath slowing, her lips losing color. You try every trick you know, call on every scrap of skill and memory, whisper all the prayers and curses you have ever learned. Sometimes nothing works. The room grows hushed as you work, the world shrinking to the sound of your own breath and the mother's desperate gasps. You feel the weight of every eye on you, watching for a miracle. If you falter, you can sense the blame already forming, thick as smoke. Your hands move with mechanical precision, packing wounds, coaxing life, fighting a battle that is already lost. When it is over, when there is nothing more to be done, you clean your tools, wipe the blood from your hands, and face the family. The accusations never come right away. First, there is a stunned silence, as if grief has stolen everyone's voices. Then slowly, the questions begin. Was there nothing else you could have tried? Did you use the right herbs? Should we have called the priest sooner? Their words are not loud, not at first, but they sting all the same. Sometimes a grandmother sobs that things were done differently in her day. A husband turns away, jaw clenched, refusing to look at you. Children peer from behind skirts, wide eyed and frightened, as if you carry the shadow of death itself. You do your best to explain, to reassure, to remind them of what was inevitable. Sometimes you simply say nothing. You have learned that no amount of words can change a heart already set against you. The guilt settles in your bones, heavier than fatigue, colder than the stone floor beneath your feet. You carry it with you back through the mud, back to your empty house, where it curls up beside you like an old, unwelcome cat. The guilt is not just theirs, it is yours too. No matter how rational you try to be, no matter how often you remind yourself of the limits of your power, the what ifs gnaw at your mind. What if you had arrived sooner? What if you had chosen a different herb, tried a different position, been less tired, more clever, more lucky? Each failure is a personal wound, slow to heal and easy to reopen in the dark sleepless hours of the night. For days after, you walk through the village with your head down, bracing yourself for the whispers, the cold shoulders, the averted eyes. Sometimes a woman's mother will cross herself as you pass. Sometimes children run from you in the street. Sometimes the priest's sermon contains pointed warnings about pride and the dangers of interfering with God's will. You know that in every story told by the hearth, your name is mentioned, sometimes in sympathy, often in suspicion. A few families understand. They bring you a bowl of soup, a loaf of bread, a silent squeeze of your hand. Their kindness is rare and often quiet, meant for private moments rather than public defense. You treasure these gestures, but know not to expect them. Mostly, you must bear the weight alone. The worst is when you must face the bereaved every day. The mother's absence is felt everywhere, in the hush that falls over her house, in the empty space at the market, in the faded laughter of her children. Each reminder is a fresh wound, reopening your guilt anew. Some families never speak to you again. Others, after a time, find their way back to you when need once more overcomes suspicion. You wish you could shed the guilt, that it would wash off with the blood and dirt at the end of the day. But it clings tighter than any stain, invisible yet all consuming. You carry it with you to every new birth, every fresh hope, every next crisis. You have learned to work through it because you must. There is always another call, another mother in need, another family waiting for you to succeed where you once failed. So you gather your tools, steady your hands, and walk back into the world, wearing your guilt like a second skin. You remind yourself again and again that to be a midwife is to live with failure as surely as with success. No one else will remember your victories, but you will never forget your defeats. Spring is supposed to be the season of renewal, of hope, and new beginnings. For you, and for many in your village, it is mostly a season of dread, a time when death seems to return with the thaw, more eager and persistent than the first shoots of green. The ground softens and the snow recedes, revealing not flowers, but bones. A calf lost to the cold, the brittle remains of an old woman who did not survive the winter, the memories of all those who have gone before. You know, as everyone knows, that the most dangerous time is just beginning. It is a cruel irony. Just when the world begins to warm, life grows most precarious. All through the winter, you have watched families ration their last onions, scrape the mold from the bread, boil roots that taste of earth and bitterness. By the time the first green appears, bodies are thin and spirits thinner. Children's bellies are swollen with hunger. Old men cough up blood in the morning and blame it on the damp. Women look at you with hollow eyes, desperate and resigned. You know what they are thinking. Will they make it to summer, or will their name be another whispered at the well? For a midwife, spring brings more than the usual burden. The women who come to term now have spent their pregnancies starving, their bodies drained of strength. Babies born in these months arrive early, small or twisted, sometimes no more than a breath and a hope. You have learned to dread the sound of the first birds singing in the bare branches. It means you will be called to more deaths than births, to more wailing than laughter. The worst are the fevers that rise with the warming air. The village fills with coughs, with rashes, with the eyes that burn too bright in gaunt faces. You know the signs: a flush that does not fade, a tongue dry and swollen, a chill that no fire will drive away. Sometimes a mother is already ill when her labor begins. You do what you can, but you have little to offer beyond boiled water, bitter teas, and the empty comfort of your hands. Some recover, but many do not. You are expected to perform miracles, and when you cannot, the disappointment curdles into suspicion. In spring, you find yourself more often the subject of muttered conversations, more often the recipient of narrowed eyes and crossed fingers. The same families who shared their last potatoes with you in February now watch you as if you are the one who brings the fever, as if your presence is a curse. You cannot blame them. You too would give anything for someone to blame. Sometimes the deaths come so quickly you lose count. In 1 week, you might bury a mother, her baby, and her grandmother. The church bells ring and ring, tolling not for hope, but for warning. The graveyard grows crowded, new mounds rising in the damp earth. The children's games grow quieter, more subdued, as if even the young sense that something is stalking them. Each time you pass a house draped with black cloth, you shiver, knowing it could just as easily be your own. Food is no easier to find, even as the world turns green again. You make soup from nettles and dandelion leaves, gnaw on bones that have been boiled 3 times, chew on the leathery crusts of last autumn's bread. Every bite is an effort, every swallow feels like a wager against the hunger that never really leaves. The relentless rain of spring does not help. It turns the paths to rivers of mud, chills the air, soaks into every garment. It finds the leaks in your roof, the holes in your shoes, the cracks in your bones. You move through the village half drowned, feeling the cold settle in your chest. Every cough in the night feels like a warning. In these weeks, you become less a healer and more a witness. You sit beside beds, holding hands that tremble, listening to stories that will end too soon. You help the living prepare for death, cleaning bodies, lighting candles, whispering the old prayers that even the priest cannot remember. You try not to cry when children die, but sometimes you fail. You are only human despite what the village thinks. Spring does not last forever, of course. Eventually, the hunger fades, the coughs grow fewer, and the gravediggers are given a brief rest. The sun grows stronger, the days longer, the world warmer. There are moments of beauty, babies who survive, mothers who regain their strength, neighbors who share the first real meal of the year. But you know, deep down, that the reprieve is only temporary. Next spring, the cycle will begin again. You count the seasons not by flowers or birds, but by how many you have lost, how many you have saved, how many times you have wondered if this will finally be the year the work is too much. But each time you find yourself still here, standing in the rain, watching the world go green, and knowing that soon you will be called again. Because in the end, spring is not about hope. It is about survival, and that is all you can ever promise. Age creeps up on you quietly, like damp through stone. One day you are moving through the village with only the ordinary aches of long days and cold nights, and the next you realize your knees never truly stop hurting. Your hands shake when you try to thread a needle, and your vision blurs when you squint at the small print in the battered psalter you can barely read. Your hair is grayer than not. Your back refuses to straighten, and the cold seems to find you no matter how many shawls you wrap around your shoulders. At first, you try to hide it. The world has no use for a weak midwife. You keep your complaints to yourself, pressing your lips tight against any groans as you haul water or trudge through the rain to yet another midnight birth. You work through headaches and fevers, dizziness and chills, determined not to let anyone see the price your body is now demanding for all those sleepless years. You rub your knees with animal fat, chew willow bark for the pain, brew special teas for the stiffness in your hands, and keep moving. But age will not be denied. The stairs become steeper, the fields seem farther, and every slippery patch of mud is a threat. You fall more often, once twisting your ankle, another time bruising your hip so badly it aches for a month. You no longer trust your memory as you once did. Sometimes you mix up herbs, forget a name, leave the kettle boiling dry on the fire. You try to laugh it off, but the laughter is thin. You can feel the world changing around you, and you are not changing fast enough to keep up. You notice, too, how the village women begin to look past you. The same mothers who once begged for your advice now roll their eyes when you offer it, preferring the theories of a younger neighbor or the promises of a passing herbal peddler. Some women, ones you helped birth years ago, now see you as just another old woman, a relic, a background character in the story of their own busy lives. The younger girls, round bellied and nervous, sometimes turn to you with questions, but their mothers warn them, do not listen too closely. Her mind is going. The respect you once commanded slips away slowly, replaced by a kind of polite impatience. The priest rarely acknowledges you unless someone is dying. Children no longer follow at your heels, hoping for a sweet or a story. They see you as part of the scenery now, like the old willows down by the river, ancient, stubborn in the way. Even gratitude withers with age. When you manage a difficult birth, it is dismissed as luck. When you fail, it is because you are too old, too slow, not what you used to be. The whispers you once heard about witches are replaced by jokes about senility, about your shaking hands and fading sight. You find yourself staying quiet, shrinking into corners, trying to be useful in ways that will not draw attention. You clean more than you heal, fetch more than you mend. Sometimes a neighbor will take pity on you, bring you a bowl of stew, or help patch at your leaking roof. These gestures are generous, but they sting too. Reminders that you are no longer the essential figure you once were. You try to be grateful, but inside you feel something shrivel a little each time someone calls you dear or poor thing. You remember what it was like to be respected, to be feared, to be needed. The memory is sharp, almost painful. You wonder if this is how all women end up, useful until they are not, then left to fade. You think of the old midwife who taught you, how she died alone and half mad, muttering to herself as the village quietly avoided her house. You swore it would be different for you, but you see now that this fate comes for everyone eventually. Old age is not just aches and pains, but a kind of invisibleness. You become transparent, a ghost in your own home, a shadow at the edge of the fire. People talk over you, about you, rarely to you. When you are noticed, it is with irritation or pity or worse, amusement. You wish they would at least fear you. Fear, at least, is a kind of respect. And yet, the calls still come, fewer now, and only when things are truly dire. The village may prefer younger hands, but when death is close, when a baby refuses to breathe or a mother is bleeding out, they remember you. In these moments, the old strength comes back, your mind sharpens, your hands remember what to do. You are still needed, if only as a last resort. But when the crisis passes, the gratitude is short lived. You are left alone again, to nurse your aches, to stare at the fire, to count the days until someone else remembers your name. You wonder how many more winters you have left, how many more springs you will see. Sometimes, in rare moments of honesty, you allow yourself to mourn what you have lost, not just youth and health, but the certainty that you mattered. You remind yourself, as you patch another hole in your roof, that survival is its own kind of victory. You are still here, you are still alive, and for now, that is enough. But deep down, you know, old age is not a rest. It is simply another kind of burden, a slower, lonelier, and far less respected one. Evenings arrive earlier now. The sun seems in a hurry to sink, leaving the world in the hands of a dusk that settles like a heavy, wet blanket. You sit by the dying fire, shoulders hunched and shawl drawn close, listening to the symphony of village sounds, the distant barking of a hungry dog, the lowing of a cow shut in for the night, the creak of your own roof giving way a little more with each passing week. The darkness presses against the window, patient and familiar. You are left alone with your thoughts. There was a time when you filled your evenings with work, preparing herbs, mending clothes, straightening the jumble of supplies in your basket for the next emergency. Now your eyes grow tired after a few stitches, your fingers too stiff to grind roots for long. Some nights you simply stare into the embers, hypnotized by the dying glow, lulled into stillness by the monotony. This is the most peace you know, and it is not peaceful at all. Your mind wanders down the well trodden paths of regret and memory. You count the faces you have lost, mothers, babies, even old neighbors who once laughed at your stubbornness. Sometimes you find yourself speaking their names aloud, as if this small act might anchor them in the world a little longer. But the names fade faster every year. The graveyard behind the church grows crowded, and soon there will be no one left who remembers half the stones. You wonder who will remember you when the time comes. You think about death more often now, not with fear, but with a kind of weary resignation. In your world, death is a neighbor, a presence woven into every ordinary day. You have witnessed its work so many times, slow and gentle, swift and violent, sometimes almost merciful. It has lost its sharp edges. Still, when the wind moans through the cracks in your walls, you shiver and pull the blanket tighter, reminding yourself that you are not ready, not yet. Some nights, the memories are too sharp. You remember the screams that would not stop, the blood you could not staunch, the small bodies that slipped away no matter how hard you begged. You remember the accusations, voiced and silent, old and new, that have followed you for as long as you can recall. You remember the few rare moments of joy, a mother's tears of relief, a baby's first howl, a loaf of bread left on your stoop. The balance has never been in your favor, but you keep the good moments close, tokens against the darkness. Gloom is your companion, an old friend. There is little to do but accept it. You have seen younger women rail against their fate, fight the loneliness, the exhaustion, the constant threat of blame. Some move away, hoping for better fortune in another village, only to vanish from memory within a season. Others grow bitter, their voices sharp and brittle, until even their children fear them. You have chosen neither rebellion nor bitterness, only a sort of slow surrender. Let the darkness come. Let the world forget. You will sit and watch and remember as long as you are able. You keep your small rituals. Before bed, you sprinkle water on the hearth, murmur an old rhyme your mother taught you, run your fingers over the charms hanging above the door. They do not keep out death, nor do they hold the shadows at bay, but they remind you that you are still here, still part of the endless chain. Some nights, you find yourself wishing for a visit, a neighbor, a stray cat, even one of the village children. More often, you are left alone with the sound of your own breath and the slow ticking of your heart. The thought of your own end is not a terror, but a puzzle. Will anyone come when your time arrives? Will someone close your eyes, wash your body, whisper the old prayers? Or will you join the long line of forgotten women, vanished in the night, their stories dissolved into the mud and fog of the village. You have done your best to leave something behind: a well taught apprentice, a few sturdy blankets, a handful of stubborn herbs still growing in the garden. It does not feel like much. There are rare nights when the gloom gives way to something softer: a memory of laughter, the sweetness of a spring morning, the gentleness of a hand held in thanks. These are fleeting, but they carry you through the longest hours. The world is not all darkness, you remind yourself, though it tries very hard to be. You douse the embers, settle beneath your patched blanket, and let your mind drift where it will. If you dream of water and earth and sky, of voices you have known and lost, of the quiet certainty that everything ends, and that the ending is not so different from the long evenings you have already endured. When the new day breaks, you will rise again, slow, stiff, but not finished, for now there is only the darkness and the heavy comfort of knowing you have survived it one more night. As the years pile up, your memory becomes less a treasure chest and more a heavy satchel you must carry everywhere. There is little joy in it. What you remember most are not your successes, but your failures. It is the faces of those you could not save that visit you most often, particularly in the silent, hollow hours before dawn. Their voices echo in your mind, not accusing, not forgiving, but simply present, an endless, weighty roll call. It starts with the children, always the children. You remember each tiny body you held, limp and quiet, your fingers fumbling for a heartbeat you never found. You recall the way mothers wailed and fathers paced, silent or shouting, when the news became real. Some of the babies had no name yet. Others had names chosen and whispered for months, hopes already attached to every letter. You remember the effort it took to clean and wrap each one, to hand them to their mothers, or place them ever so gently in the cold arms of a grandmother. Their absence lingers in every household, a hollow where laughter should have been. Then come the women, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters who did not survive. It is strange how you recall the small details best: the calluses on a laborer's hand, the way a girl's braid came undone as she tossed and turned, the mended patch on a nightdress soaked with blood. You remember final words, gasped between contractions, or whispered as the pain faded and chill crept in. Sometimes it was nothing more than a look, an apology, a plea for someone to care for the children left behind. You remember everyone. You never speak of it, not to anyone, but you see their faces as you go about your chores, or when you pass by their houses. Now quieter, emptier, the families rarely speak to you of the lost. Once the grieving is done, if it is ever done, the subject is dropped, as if silence can seal the wound. But you remember, when you see a widower in the market, eyes downcast, or a child you helped deliver now motherless, you feel the ache of all you could not do. The families do not need to remind you. You carry their sorrow alongside your own. The worst memories are not always the ones with the most violence or the loudest grief. Sometimes it is the ones where hope hung on for days or even weeks before slipping away. The child who seemed healthy then died suddenly in the night. The woman who lingered with fever, growing weaker with every day until she slipped away so quietly that the house seemed startled by the stillness. There are memories of the ones you buried yourself when no one else was strong enough or willing to do the work. You remember digging through the stubborn earth, the rain running down your face, whispering a prayer just in case it mattered. You have learned over the years to hide your grief from others. There is no reward for a soft heart, and even less for a tearful one. Instead, you let the sorrow settle deep, layering upon itself until it forms a kind of armor. You act as if you are unaffected. You do your work. You give comfort where you can. You move on to the next need. But the ghosts come back at night when you are too tired to resist them. Some nights you wonder what would have happened if you had made a different choice, chosen a different herb, arrived a little earlier, sent for help sooner. It is a pointless game, but one you cannot stop playing. The village may forget its dead, or at least learn to speak of them less, but you do not have that luxury. You remember not because you want to, but because forgetting would be a kind of betrayal. You owe it to those lost faces to remember, to keep their stories alive, even if only in the quiet corridors of your own mind. Your dreams, too, are peopled by the dead. You see them sometimes as they were in life, laughing or scolding, calling to you for help. Other times, they come as shadows, drifting silently through your sleep, leaving you breathless with guilt and longing when you wake. These dreams do not frighten you anymore. They are almost a comfort, a reminder that you have not let go completely. There are times when you see yourself among them, joining the long procession of forgotten souls. You wonder who will remember you, who will speak your name when you are gone. Will you haunt the next midwife, whispering warnings and regrets into her sleepless nights? Or will you finally find rest, leaving your burdens behind? You try to remind yourself of those you saved, the mothers who still greet you at the well, the children who grew strong despite it all. But they are fewer than the lost, or perhaps just less vivid in your memory. Success is silent, ordinary. Failure echoes, and so, as you sit by your fire, you remember them all, each face, each name, each quiet end. You let the memories settle around you, heavy and familiar, the price you pay for the work you have chosen, or rather, the work that has chosen you. You carry their stories because no one else will, and because you know, deep down, that this is all that remains. Tomorrow, you will rise and go out into the world again, doing what you can, as you always have. But tonight, you honor the lost by letting yourself remember, by refusing to look away, even as the weight threatens to crush you. This is your penance, your ritual, your only certainty. Dawn arrives slowly now, hesitant and pale, as if the sun itself is uncertain about returning to this world of mud, toil, and endless need. You lie awake in your narrow bed, listening as the cocks begin to crow and the village creaks reluctantly into life. Another day, just like the thousand that have come before, just like the thousand that will follow for others, even if not for you. You rise, every joint protesting, every muscle stiff and slow. You go through your morning routine, such as it is, with the same careful patience you have learned through decades of repetition. The bread is stale, the water cold, the fire reluctant to catch. You take small pleasure in the mundane, noticing the way the first light touches the crooked rafters, or the way the steam curls from your tea, a little miracle of warmth in the chill. You look at your hands, scarred, bent, fingers marked by the endless work of a midwife's life. They are not beautiful, but they have been strong, and that is what mattered. You trace the lines of your palms and wonder how many lives began and ended beneath them. You try, just for a moment, to forgive yourself for all you could not do, to feel pride in the moments you did everything right. It is not easy. Regret has always been quicker to the surface than satisfaction. You peer out the window. The village moves in its familiar rhythm. A girl hauling water, a mother shouting after a barefoot child, a blacksmith's hammer ringing in the distance. You are a part of this world, even if your part is small and fading. Somewhere in another home, a younger woman is tending to a laboring mother, hands steadier and eyes sharper than yours have been for years. You hope she will be luckier. You hope she will be kinder to herself than you ever managed to be. Sometimes you wonder what will change after you are gone. Will another woman step into your place? Or will the villagers turn to a wandering peddler, or the priest with his prayers? Will the next midwife face the same suspicions, the same isolation, the same burden of other people's pain? You suspect she will. The world does not change quickly, not here. But maybe, just maybe, each generation finds some small way to make it more bearable for the next. A softer word, a hand offered instead of turned away, a little more mercy for the inevitable failures. As you gather your worn things, herbs that have lost their scent, a knife that could use sharpening, scraps of cloth yellowed with age, you think about leaving them for whoever comes after. You imagine her finding your notes, your bundle of dried lavender, the old spoon that has stirred 100 bitter teas. You hope she will feel less alone with these remnants, a quiet inheritance of stubbornness and care. You step outside, and the morning greets you with damp, earthy air. You feel both old and young for a moment, old with the ache of years, young with the hope that some part of you might live on in the work of others. You smile, barely, as a dog barks at a cart trundling by, as the world insists on beginning again. Today, there will be births and deaths, laughter and weeping, bread baked and broken, stories whispered and forgotten. You have walked this path every day, and now, at last, you let yourself feel a flicker of hope, not for yourself, perhaps, but for those who will follow. You hope the next midwife will find more comfort than you did, more understanding from her neighbors, more kindness in the face of failure. You hope the world will be just a little less hard, a little less cold. You take one last look at your home, the familiar shape of it outlined against the morning. You think of the women who trusted you, the children who survived against all odds, the quiet, ordinary courage it took to keep going. You remind yourself that too is worth remembering. The day begins, indifferent and unstoppable as it always does. You move through it slowly, steadily, ready to answer a call if it comes, ready, perhaps, to rest if it does not. You know now that hope is not a promise, but a choice, a stubborn, defiant act in a world that offers little encouragement. As the sun rises, you face whatever comes, not with joy, but with the deep, exhausted dignity of someone who has endured. You carry with you the memory of all you have lost, and the faint, stubborn wish that those who follow might lose a little less. And that, you think, is enough.